Well, we're gonna go ahead and get started, and
Yeah.
I'll let you get to your day. Hello, everyone that's out there, and those of you who are gonna probably look at this on the replay. We welcome you into this conversation. We don't have a name of it's not really a show, I guess. We don't even have a name of this show. I think we're just gonna be talking about different topics, and it could be called this or that or something like that. I don't know. We don't really have a name for this, but that's okay. That's all right. I am Steve Worthy, and I am the writer of Retail Leadership on the Substack that's here. I also founder CEO of Worthy Retail, so we are a global learning and development company focused in on senior retail leaders, and we have a membership community called the Campus. I love for you to learn a little bit more about that, and I think one of the things that sparked our conversation was upcoming book I have. It's probably spring of 2027 called the Retail Leader Paradox. Excited about that. And I will let my partner in crime introduce himself.
Yeah, my name is Jörg Kampers. I have a Substack called Silver Streamer, and my role currently is working in AI, but about knowledge transfer. I'm on profession. I'm consulting SMB customers who are actually retiring and wanting to hand over their business into younger hands, and they need some education on that, how to do that, and how to actually incorporate the digital transformation and the use of AI to help them overcome the knowledge transfer. I also wrote a book called
Yes, yeah.
Riding the Wave, which is basically the history of 35 years in the IT industry, and it's
Mm,
my biography. So,
mm, mm. So it's interesting that you mentioned like 35 years, and I was writing something down today about like my experience in time and role or in the industry, and then also like the time I've been coaching. It's interesting how we could put all of that, uh, everything that we've learned into like the number of years we've been sort of out there doing things. And there's just a lot of knowledge that you and I both have gained
mhm.
in our overall experiences. Um, in whatever industry that may be. And so that's really what we're here to talk about today is kind of to talk about the evaporation, if you will, of the institutional knowledge. I don't know how we got in that conversation. This was probably about 2 or 3 conversations ago, and it just
Yeah,
and it just and it just started.
I pulled up a demographic sheet the other week,
Yeah.
and it's called the demographic bomb.
Mm,
So we have about 13.4 million people workers retiring in the
mm.
next 15 years.
Wow.
And that means in numbers, in Germany alone, we are losing 4,000 experts per day.
Mm, mm,
Let that sink
mm.
in. And the SME owner aged over 55, 20 years ago, that percentage was 20%.
Wow.
Today, 57% of owners of an SMB are aged 55 or older. And it's about 114 14,000 businesses are planning annual closures.
Mm.
That's a huge figure, and we are expecting something like 600,000 companies currently looking for a successor
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
handing over their business.
Wow.
And uh, these are the numbers only for Germany, and
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure they are even bigger in the US or in
Oh, listen to
worldwide.
me. I see your numbers and I raise you. It's just like um we are looking at I always got to start with the retail, right? Because that's where my heart is. On a monthly basis, there is a loss of around 400,000 people leaving within the retail space alone. And the interesting part was that I try to, it's not apples, and it's not as easy to get like the information from a demographic standpoint. But what I was able to get was information around tenure. So even though we have 400 some odd thousand people leaving in a monthly within the retail space, um, the tenure, and this is really interesting, man, that the tenure was only about 2.5 years, right?
Mhm.
That's what we're seeing, and then when I look across industries too, so leisure and hospitality, typically 2 years, manufacturing, 4.5 years, government, 6 years, right? And these are just the sort of the churn within a lot of these industries. And I think part of our conversation was around the um the knowledge that's actually leaving the industry. And I thought a good place for us to start would be our own journeys, right?
Mhm.
Our own journeys of like what you've built and previously in your career, and then what caused you and the circumstances around you leaving and then moving into what you're doing right now.
Um, yeah, as I written out in my book, I
Yeah.
started in the mid '80s in the IT industry. So I was one of the first guys on the ground working with computers, working with actually computer manufacturers.
Mhm.
Starting as a product manager and tailoring the devices towards the need of the market, but then soon going into or changing into sales and helping people to basically get hand on a PC, on a mainframe equipment, networking, later on telecommunications, PBXs, cloud PBXs, 5G, Wi-Fi equipment,
Mhm.
and so on. So I was always on the latest edge. And the sales process at that time was more or less always the same. It's relation driven.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
People buy from people and
Yeah.
still do. But the pace has changed significantly.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
especially what I've noticed, because I'm
Mhm.
working or I have worked for US corporations many years, and the pace there is completely different, and the attitude towards the sales force is totally different.
Mhm. Mhm.
When in Europe you are recognized as an experienced worker, and you get, let's say, recognized for the time you've been with the company.
Mm.
In the US, it's different.
Yeah.
If you are not performing well, you get a warning next quarter. If you don't perform again, you lose your job.
Yeah.
And these are the things which are now transferred also to US companies acting in Europe. But then again, management has some struggle with the German or European employment situation, with the legal situation,
Mhm.
because higher protective laws than in the US. I left my last job, let's say, more or less because I was too old,
Mm.
and I was
Mm.
maybe replaced by a younger person. But on the other hand, the US guys who were managing that department,
Mhm.
um, they try to find somebody who is more energetic, more younger, which they can control more and guide more. So that's why
Mhm.
that was one of the reasons why I left the company. Um, because I'm actually too old and too tired of those kind of politics.
Mm. It's interesting. Yeah, we have here in the States, we have what they call right to work states, and laws in different states, meaning that I can literally fire you at any point in time.
Mhm,
It doesn't even matter if you were, late. Having said that, that those laws have sort of loosened up over time because we saw a lot of companies or a lot of individuals filing lawsuits against
mhm,
that fact that you can terminate me without cause, right? So especially within the retail space, it was really used. I remember years ago, this probably had to be about 20 years ago, maybe 22 years ago, when Jack Welch came out with a book, but he also came out with this methodology of every year getting rid of your bottom 10%. I don't know if you remember
mhm,
those days when he started preaching that. I can't remember the phrase that he used. He said every year you just need to get rid of your bottom 10%. And a lot of companies, of course, here in the States, they took that as the gospel and
mhm,
they just started running with it, and it was a mandate for a lot of us. Every year, Steve, every year you gotta trim and cut your bottom 10%. Even if even if they were showing signs of improvement, it was still if they're in the bottom 10%, you gotta get rid of them. So it's a
mhm,
very aggressive, um, mindset that we have here in the States, because I think you and I talked about this before, and I'm just gonna continue to use retail as my lens, is that we're very results oriented.
mhm,
And if you're not getting the results, that's all that matters. And we were talking about the difference a little bit over in the UK and over in Europe, is that it's the process. If the process is broken, that's where the issues and the judgment, are actually taking place. But here in the States, man, it's all about the results.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
It's it comes all down to earnings per share.
Yeah.
So the quarterly result count more than a long-term strategy.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
um, that is something which basically hurts your business
Yeah.
because if you only think quarter by quarter by quarter and year by year, you can measure the results, but you can't plan in advance for a long-term strategy, like what happens in 3 years, in 4 years,
Yeah.
in 5 years.
Yeah.
Um, I'm telling a lot of my customers that they need to not do forecasting.
Mm.
So in terms like will your business look like in 3 years? And what they typically do, and US companies do the same, they
Mhm.
take the current revenue
Yeah.
and then add maybe 20%, which is expected by the board, and then probably manage that with the inflation rate and the economic percentage and so on, and they come up with
Right.
15% year growth year on year. I tell people the different way. I do backcasting.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I tell
Mhm.
them, where do you want to be in 5 years?
Yeah.
That is your goal. And what do you need to achieve in
100%.
4 years now to reach your goal in 5 years? And then what have do you have to do in 3 years to reach 4 year goal, etc., etc.
Yeah.
That's a different approach, but that doesn't work well with the quarterly driven
No.
results
Mm-mm.
method
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
because this is short sighted. You want to make your earnings per share because you want to keep your shareholders happy. And
Mhm.
that is a short-sighted view of either quarter by quarter or year on year. But if you want to plan strategically and want to grow strategically, you need to have a long-term vision and
Yeah.
then plan from that backwards.
Yeah. Well, I think the issue with a lot of these companies and even us as individuals now, right? The long term is completely different than what it used to be. Right? When years ago, we would say your long-term strategy, like, yeah, 3, 5 years. Now, with the rate of technology, AI, competition, social media, like, your short term is, 6 to 12 months, and your long term is maybe 1 to 2 years, right? And in
Mhm,
some
mhm,
instances, in some industries, that's even shorter. right? Because technology and what's like I said, in competition and also the ease of getting into different markets just makes it so much easier for for new entrants to come in and take some market share, from you. So when I can almost not feel for them, but I can almost understand why they go quarter by quarter because that's what they can control, right? Or at least they think they can. So that's why they go quarter by
Mhm,
quarter, right?
mhm.
And like I can't control 3, 4, 5 years in the future. Well, even back in the day, none of us could do that. But at least I think the goal when we did it, okay, I sound like an old man when I keep saying back in my day, but when we did it back in my day, it was very similar to what you talked about. Was like you forecast where you want to be in 3, 4, 5 years, and then you work your way back. Now, companies don't want to do that anymore, right?
No, no. And now the global challenges which we are facing are even complicating it more and more. I mean,
Yep.
on one hand, we have the demographic change where we
Yeah.
lose about, let's say, 30% of our workforce within the next 10, 15 years.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
And then in addition, we have the AI and robotic coming in with additional benefits, and they might influence each other because if especially in some jobs where robots, for instance, can take over, you will replace that workplace, but
Mhm.
you lose the knowledge because most
Yeah.
people are unprepared. That's what you said last week.
Mhm.
An exit interview was asking why you leave, but it's not preserving your knowledge. Yeah, the
No,
guy is out.
no.
Forget about it. Yeah, and maybe in sales and other jobs where you used to work with CRM tools, and so you have some of that knowledge in the CRM tool, but that
Mm,
captures probably 60 to 80% maximum.
yeah, that's it.
And the knowledge how to deal with a difficult customer or a complaining customer, that is gone.
Mhm.
And then you have somebody following up who's fresh from university, 25, 30 years old. Um, he doesn't have the knowledge and the experience.
No.
But he's approaching with his attitude, and that doesn't work because if he's lucky, his counterpart is at the same age, then it might work. But
Yeah,
if he's facing somebody like us on the other side, mm,
yeah. Mhm.
uh,
Yeah. It could be a little different.
yeah,
Um, I'll go into a little bit of my story, and then we could talk a little bit more about, the what we're seeing, around the loss of institutional knowledge. My exit from retail wasn't really due to my maybe it was, I don't know. Um, it wasn't the typical like, I hate everybody, I hate this industry, I don't want to do this anymore. I honestly felt that what I could give the industry was hindered by where I currently was in the role that I was currently in, and my
mm,
inability to be able to share my thoughts freely without either reprimand or messing up culturally, whether it was my team or the company culture because of how I see the world. And I am not a contrarian person. I am not a like excuse my French, like a shit starter to be just a shit starter, right? There are those
mm,
people out there that can do that. That's not really my bag. My situation was there were just so many things that were going unaddressed with leaders and with teams, and um where I was seeing it, whether it was professionally or even like when I started Worthy Retail, when I started coaching on the side, where I was hearing just so much of this, I got passed over for this. This culture is doing this, and I can't lead the way I used to lead, and all these different aspects. And so for me, um, I said, you know what? I just got to leave. I got to leave so that I can really, you know, sort of it sounds so such like a movie, fulfill my destiny, right? Like Excalibur or something like that, right? um, like I just had to leave. And the more and more I thought about it, and the sooner and the closer and closer I got to my time frame of leaving, it just became even more obvious that this is what I wanted to do. But our broader topic is around that the losing of that institutional knowledge, right? Because when I was in the business and I was bringing on people who were, you know, 21, 22, 25, man, I was able to quickly like pass along some of that information to them and then course correct them, right? When I
Mhm.
saw something that didn't go the right way per se, and then they would learn quickly, then they can adjust and adapt. But my knowledge, your knowledge, and hundreds of thousands of other people that are leaving the various industries, that knowledge is going away, man. What are and this kind of the broader question that we can talk about, like what are companies to do now, right? And what are you telling some of your clients who are probably in that same boat?
Um, First of all, knowledge transfer is the most sought after AI ability in the German market at the moment because
Mhm.
everybody knows that people are leaving into retirement.
Yeah.
Everybody knows that a lot of companies have to be handed over and people are looking for a successor, but they don't know how to transfer that knowledge.
Mhm.
And creating a knowledge transfer system, um, that is something people are really struggling with. And
Mhm. Mhm.
that is again something which is about data management, how
Mm. Mm.
to store your data, how to first of all extract it
Yeah.
and then
Yeah.
store it properly, which is a digital process, could be.
Mhm.
Um, and then how do you actually then transfer that to the remaining employees or the new guys following?
Yeah.
That is something which is a big problem. And I'm focusing more and more. I mean, still under the main umbrella of succession management,
Mhm.
but
Mhm.
I'm
Mhm.
focusing more and more on the knowledge transfer side
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's the biggest pain point at the moment and will remain for the next 10 years.
It will. It is. It's interesting because there's a lot of things that go along with that knowledge transfer, like systems. It's interpretation, right? So
Hmm.
I often think about any information or insights that I would give my team. I had a team of 25. Um, I think I was always cognizant of how I shared information and how I would leave space for the different type of learners within that group, right? Sometimes the messaging would be very direct, and the people who understood directness would get it, and then the people who were like, "I don't know what you're talking about. What role do I play in this? How do I impact it?" So then I left space for those individuals to ask more questions. But then I also developed a culture, which hopefully a lot of companies are trying to do, where that even if I was to give the information, the team amongst themselves has their own language on how
Hmm.
to deal with things and how to interpret things, and they know that Tim over there is going to take Tim 2 weeks to do what I can do in one day. So
Hmm.
if you develop a strong enough team, so from relative to succession planning, right? And if you're taking that into consideration, well, I got Tanya over here who's very quick. Let me partner Tanya with Tim, and we can ramp up Tim's learning experience. So I think the interpretation and how you communicate that knowledge is the other thing that companies are probably falling short on, because you can have all the data and all of the data stacks and all of that stuff, but the interpretation is, I think, is probably going to be the utmost important.
Mhm. Especially when you talk to my niche, which is manufacturing SMB,
Mm,
there are a lot of manual processes which you can't store digitally.
yeah.
It's very hard to capture that knowledge. There are tools out there, like using AR glasses with a
Mm,
nice nifty
mm,
software, for instance, behind it.
yeah.
Then you can at least have a video which captures the manual process and allows you to create a video tutorial for somebody else who's jumping on that job later.
Mhm,
Um,
mm.
but then, in addition, there is knowledge about long-term customer relationships.
Yes,
If you have a
yes.
customer account for 20 years, that's not about
Oh,
Mr. Smith is the procurement manager, Mr. Myers is doing engineering. That doesn't help you because you don't have that personal relationship.
yes, yes. That is so critical. I mean, think about the years of knowledge exchange within that one relationship, right, that you just talked
Mhm.
about, right? 20 years of experiences that were shared back and forth with the company and with that long-term customer. And nowadays that just doesn't take place anymore. I was talking to someone, but my buddy was over a while ago, and we were talking about like we grew up in the 70s and 80s, and we remember encyclopedias,
Mhm.
right? When everything was in the encyclopedia. You ask your parents something for something, go look at it in the encyclopedia. I paid really good money for this encyclopedia set,
Yeah.
and everything was in that encyclopedia. And we were just looking at another movie. It was like an older movie, I think 16 Candles or something like that. And or Breakfast Club, my fiance and I, and we were looking at the guy like write a paper. Right, he actually had to write a paper, like, and he was handwriting, he was writing it out on a piece of paper, and I was just like the kids nowadays will go crazy having to write, a report on a paper, but we had to do that. We got the information from the encyclopedia, and then we transferred it onto a sheet of paper. There's so many different steps, and I just think about
But that is important. I mean,
yeah,
just to talk on that point, this one thing to put a report written by typewriting into your computer or dictating it into your whisper flow, whatever it is, and taking a pencil and write it on a piece of paper.
yes,
The reason is the following, because writing is a manual process which actually triggers a different part of your brain
100%.
and makes these and creates deeper memories than reading something or typing something on your mobile, on your tablet, on your computer.
Yes,
You will lose that knowledge faster. And if you write it down with a pen or pencil on a piece of paper, you will actually store that deeper in your brain.
mm. Yeah, yeah, no, it bring those days back, sometimes, I just think about, the loss of knowledge now because of the,
Mm,
um, the we can get everything at our fingertips, nowadays. We don't have to do any more searching. We don't have to, a lot of times we don't even have to think anymore, if that makes sense. And I hate to sound like that because when you think about social media, once they understand your algorithm, they understand what you like, right? You don't have to, use that search bar to say, best places in Atlanta to eat, right? I don't have to, I can still do that. But for the most part, that will show up in my feed if I keep scrolling enough, right? And so
I've
I
seen
think
I've
yeah.
seen a video last week which really upsets me, and I actually need to double check that if it's still the truth or is it just a social media hoax. There
Mhm.
was a video where, and I read that from two different sources. that the AI companies are actually speed scanning books.
Yo,
So they go in and
mhm,
buy
yeah,
whole whole libraries of books,
yeah,
cut the back off, and
yeah.
then speed scan it and destroy the books,
I
and
saw the same
even
thing.
very rare books.
Yes,
And that is something which really, really upsets me.
yes.
'Cause, I actually like to take a piece of paper in my hands and read the book. First
Mm,
of all, for the sensual sensation, but on the other hand, um, there are books which are no longer printed,
yeah,
and if you destroy them just for the purpose of scanning them and teaching your AI with that,
mm.
there's something wrong with that.
Mhm, mhm. I saw the exact same, video. I saw the exact
Mhm,
same video, and then I think I saw it on the news channel that they were talking about that, and here's the thing, like, I don't put you know I can see companies doing that. I'm not saying that they're actually, going to do it, but I can actually see companies doing that. And Cher says, not only can we get everything, we can create everything at our fingertips, exactly with AI,
mhm,
but
mhm.
we are creating so quickly, it's not sticking. Yeah,
Yeah,
because there's something about learning and then planning, but there's also implementation. Right? We a lot of times we half do the implementation. We come up with the ideas, come up with the plan, and then we sort of half do the implementation because we may not get the result that we had intended in as quickly as we thought. And so we abandon a lot of our great ideas because we didn't get the result that we actually needed.
and coming back to our main point from today,
Yes.
by, let's say, importing knowledge into the AI or into computers and so on and so on, um, you save that knowledge somewhere,
Yeah.
but you don't necessarily make it accessible.
Mm. Mhm.
And that's, I mean, exchanging or preserving knowledge from retiring colleagues, leaving colleagues, et cetera, is an
Yeah.
important thing to do. But you also have to have a mechanism in place which allows people who follow after to actually get this knowledge to know and
Yeah.
learn from it and
Mhm.
learn from the experience of their colleagues.
Yeah.
And that is something which I'm um how to say where I am afraid that this yeah, the ability to do that is also going with the colleagues who are leaving into
Mhm,
retirement
mhm,
or
mhm, mhm.
fired
Yeah.
or whatever.
One of the best things that someone taught me in leadership, and this was years ago, they said, "If there's an employee or somebody that's leaving that has a lot of knowledge, take them to lunch."
Mhm.
And this is like when I first got into leadership. I was probably 25, 26 at that time, and, military, life was different, right? Because your commanding officers will give you the knowledge whether you wanted it or not. Right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Whether you asked for it or not, they were giving it to you. So you had no other choice but to take it in and live by it and do it. So like and it wasn't until I got into the professional world where I realized that there are people hoarding, man, people are hoarding information and knowledge and all this other stuff. And I was like, why are you doing that? Like what are you gaining by not sharing that information? Where I came from a world where it was just given to you, like I said, whether you wanted it or not. And I had to learn quickly in the professional world, you have to go out and seek it. You have to ask because there's a lot of knowledge, but there are a lot of people willing to give it. So I think it was my pastor who taught like Saturday mornings he would do some leadership stuff and he taught us about that to take them out to dinner, take them out to
Mhm.
lunch and just ask them all the questions that you possibly can. And get a list and just ask them all
Exactly.
the questions. Yeah.
When I joined a new company, I was usually going out for a coffee. I was even attending the smoking breaks, yeah, even
Yeah.
if I was a non-smoker. But I was grabbing a cup of coffee, standing with the people, have a chit chat, going to lunch with them, or maybe even going to beer and dinner after work,
Right.
just to have a conversation and just to pick up and inhale as much as I can
Mm.
from their knowledge. Because once you have some sort of a friendly relationship with your colleagues or your manager, um, they are willing to tell you more than they would regularly do.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's, I mean, it's interesting because um, I was writing something in a book, and I was writing about this situation where I didn't give a leader, what they really needed at the time, and they left, and I was describing in the book, the subhead is called the conversation. It's the conversation that I had with this person who was leaving. And because I didn't, you could, y'all, everybody, you guys can read it in the book when it comes out. I'll just give you a little bit of backstory, and 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 part of the world building that I was able to do was I was able to sort of articulate how this person picked a seat in the cafe. And it was because I taught them
Mhm.
years ago on how that you have to pick the environment before you pick the conversation, right? Because the environment is so important where, if you're having a difficult conversation, you don't want that conversation in your office. A lot of people will use the office as sort of an authoritative figure to have those conversations. And then when that person leaves the office or leaves your office, tell you what, all hell could break loose. And so I always told my team when they were having conversations was to take people off site, take them to a cafe or Panera or something like that, and you pick a place where where there's the least amount of traffic and there's the least amount of visual stimulant for the
Mhm.
person that you're talking to. And I know it sounds kind of something you learn in a book, but I learned this from other leaders years ago, and I was describing in the book how she had picked the perfect seat based off of the knowledge that I shared with her like years ago. So when we start talking about knowledge sharing or knowledge transfer, man, there's something about that one-on-one conversations and being able to, speak life into other people that I think nowadays we take for granted and we just don't do anymore.
I remember the first things uh, I was doing when I came into an office of a client. I swooped around the room and checked what personal items are there,
Yeah.
just to make sure that I can start the conversation with that. I got trained to, as you said, when you go out with a customer, make sure you sit on the left side of him,
Yeah.
on the art side.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
at the end, it's all coming down to personal relationship.
Yeah.
In my last job, I was working with Vodafone, and the manager who had the buying decision was a very nice guy, but always distant.
Mm,
He always
mm,
kept a certain distance. And in German language, is different between. I mean, you guys always say first name and you,
you're right.
but we have the first name and du, which is also you, but
Mhm.
the formal way is Mr. last name, and then in German it's Sie.
Mm,
Even if usually in our industry, in the technology industry, you're quickly coming to Mr. So and so, or first name and Z, which is the formal
mhm.
pronunciation, the formal wording. and you stick with that.
Right.
And um, typically, you offer your first name and the informal greeting fairly quick. But that
Mm,
guy refused to. He was really always on a distance.
mm,
And when I got on that job, it was a very difficult situation. The products were not available, lead times were horrendous, etc., etc. So he was about to leave and go to a competitor.
mhm, mhm.
And I turned that around and made his project successful and moving forward. I was able to manipulate the delivery process within our company to prioritize his shippings so that he was able to deliver on time with his client.
Mhm, mhm.
At the end, we were on a friendly relationship, and I was the one and only vendor where he had this relationship.
Wow.
So we were talking to each other on first name and do.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm,
and
mm.
once we had signed off the second part of that major project he was working on, he invited me to a personal barbecue into his private house.
Wow. Yeah, yeah.
It's all about relationship. And um, I think that is something which you cannot store in a computer or in an AI or in a CRM.
Yeah,
In a CRM, you have the first name, the last name, some meeting comments, phone number, email address. That's it.
yeah.
Forecast number, products, no personal relationship. And the 30 something sales guy who was following my job, he
Mm.
doesn't have that relationship. And
No?
he will be back to the former Mr. So and so Z.
Yes, yes. Yeah, so he has to start from scratch where you've already built the inroads, to that relationship, and when I think about this with succession planning, right, and I'm quite sure because you still look at this on a day-to-day basis, it always intrigued me anytime I would hear people talk about, a person on their succession plan. And I could immediately know of whether or not they had a relationship with that person because of the depth in which they would speak about that individual. And
Hmm.
they would mention a personal note, something about their family or something like that. I was like, "Okay, this person actually gets them." Then it would be just a surface level, "Well, they're a hard worker, they hand things in on time, they're this and this and that," and whatever, like and I would probably probe a little bit more. "Well, tell me just a little bit more about them." And if they had nothing to say, I said, "I need you to go back and understand who this person is, right? Because you're saying
Hmm.
that they're a high performer and you don't know jack about them, right? And we
Hmm.
could be making a massive mistake by putting this person in this position, and you don't have an underlying perspective of who they really are. That surface level stuff is not going to work. And I think nowadays, especially with companies, they are okay with the surface level because just like you were talking about with this client, it takes time to develop that level of relationship where you're changing a person's greeting to you.
Hmm.
It takes time, and no one wants to put that time in anymore. And I feel like that's also when we start thinking about this knowledge transfer gap is it's going to take time to do that, and no one. I don't think a lot of companies are committed to doing that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, how do we in our last moments here? How can we help these companies? How can we help leaders? Like, yeah, here's the thing: if we were, if and this is just sort of on the spot, but we this is how our conversations always go. Like, if someone was to pay us and they said, "Steve George, we want you on the stage, and we want you to tell us how to fix this gap with institutional knowledge," what would we say? This is I don't know where this question just really just came off the top of my head.
Yeah.
So, what would be some of your
Um,
thoughts?
Knowledge transfer starts with the management team,
Mm,
with the leadership team.
yeah.
They have to grasp the importance of the knowledge capturing and the transfer.
Mhm.
And then you can discuss with them the procedure of how to capture the knowledge, how to extract it from the leaving
Mm.
employees. Yeah. And that is something I'm currently building. I'm currently working with a team of people where we want to build an agency for knowledge transfer.
Mm.
And we have
Mm.
one person in that team which is talking to senior management in banks, in insurances, and large corporations. And that was initially leadership consulting,
Yeah.
but that is becoming more and more addressing the issues of knowledge transfer and the generational demographic
Yeah.
leave and loss. And then in addition, I have somebody who is looking after compliance. I have a technical person who exactly knows how to build a corporate LLM to capture their knowledge in a database and then have
Mhm.
an AI addressing the knowledge and then transferring that to other employees,
Mhm.
like
Mhm.
with a simple chatbot or with a um, use case based written app,
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
and so on and so on. So that's what I'm currently building,
Nice.
and we're going to start in hopefully mid September, and then going outside to the market and addressing that.
That's good. That's good. I like that. I think there there are two areas that I would probably give companies to really look at, and I know they're kind of broad, but I think if they did a really good job from a due diligence standpoint, they would be better off with knowledge transfer, and that is it's culture and communication, right? Because
Hmm.
I think the culture, your culture, and and dare I say this is that knowledge transfer is not a one and done thing.
No,
It is a continuous cycle that takes place within the organization, and I think we treat it as this linear experience when it's cyclical. It has to happen constantly, and what we see in a lot of organizations is that their culture is very from point A to point B, and that's how it is, and then everything in between. And if you can't work within the confines of point A and point B, then so be it, right? And I think they have to do a really good deep dive into what their culture really is, right? How
hmm,
how how does knowledge gets transferred currently, but then also, how are things communicated? And I love what you said about it starts with the management team because that's where the culture is built, right?
yeah, yeah,
I get a lot of leaders who say they want to change the status quo and they want to go in and they want to make an impact. I said, listen to me, you're going to make the level of impact based on what the culture allows you to make. And
right.
I know people don't realize and sometimes they hate to come into me because I always give them the truth, but it is the truth. Like you're gonna make an impact related to or relative to what the culture allows you to make, right? Until you build up the chops and the influence and the other ability to be able to infiltrate and make some cultural change with the management team, it's only going to allow you to do so much. And that's where companies are standing right now is that the knowledge transfer is only doing so much because that's what the culture is allowing it to do. And then I want to come in with all of this communication and share all of this knowledge and information with everybody. The culture's like, Steve, just keep it to yourself. We don't really need that right now. We don't want you upsetting the apple cart because what you say may influence the culture in a different way. And we don't want
Hmm.
that to take place. And so a lot of people who maybe want to share things, they're apprehensive about it because the culture is not allowing them to do that. So, if anybody's listening to this, you want to bring George and myself onto your company or onto your stage to talk about it. We're going to talk about these two topics, and my thing is culture and communication, and George is already building his business to address this.
Exactly, exactly, and I'm happy to work in the US as well, so
Yeah.
no problem. I'm international.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Same. Listen to me. I will learn German very quickly, and I've been thinking about another language. So German, I may need to hire you as my coach to help me with that. To help me with that
Have
as
you had
well.
a glimpse into my book?
Yeah, I know. Yeah. You know what? But here's the interesting thing, right? So you sent me, and thank you for sending me an English version of it. But I know that your original German version is the tone and tenure of that is probably gonna be a little different than the US, like, in terms of, like,
It's
wording wise and just different things that, um that I've actually been able to pick up from watching football for the number of years that I've watched it. When they will say a certain term or a certain way of saying something, I'm like, we don't use it that way, over here in the States, right? It's just certain things. So I'm interested to dive into your book, man, because I know it's going to be exciting.
Yeah. All
Yeah,
right.
excellent, man. Well, let
I will
everybody
send you
know.
a hard copy
Yeah,
anyways. So
I'm sorry. Go ahead. What you say?
I said I will send you a hard copy anyways.
And make sure you sign it, man, beforehand, because
Yeah.
that's that knowledge transfer that that we're
Exactly.
that needs to
Exactly.
take place, man. Well, tell everybody where they can find you and what you're doing, man. And I know they can find you on Substack, but like just tell everybody a little bit about what you got going on.
Yeah, I have Substack. It's either silverstreamer.substack.com or on the web, it's Jörg with an OE dot campers. No, sorry, www.yourcampers in one word.com. Um, and then I have a YouTube channel. So
Yeah.
youtube.com/@ your campers.
Nice.
So that's where you can find me, and LinkedIn, obviously, and the usual suspects.
Outstanding. And if you're looking at this, you can reach me at worthyretail.com/now. It actually one-stop shop for the book that's coming out for our retail study that we do every year. Podcast and executive coaching master classes, everything is on that page. We can learn, more about what we have going at Worthy Retail. So, man, always exciting. I don't know if we picked the topic, for next go round, because we have so many other ones that we're going to chat about. And I look forward to our next conversation offline. And then, of course, as we continue to do these live streams together, man, I appreciate your time, and man, I learned so much from you in our conversations, and I've just been enjoying this journey that we've been together,
So
man.
do I. Thank you very much.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I will let you get back to your day, and everyone, thank you for being here and listening to us, and get back to your Saturday or whatever you're going to be looking at this on, whatever day you're going to be looking at this on, and enjoy your day. And we'll talk to you later. Have a great day. All
Right.
right.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for having me. Bye.
All right. Always.